When I first started this channel, I had an idea of what I wanted it to be, and I think it was mainly obviously telling our story, but kind of practical things. And it's not just the actual journey itself, isn't just about the practicalities. There's a lot of emotion involved, and that's really kind of come to a head this week. I think I thought once I'd given up work and didn't have that pressure anymore, that it would be this big relief that would kind of fix things. Not 100% obviously, but would take a big weight off me. And it did in the beginning initially, because you have that sense of relief, something you've been preparing for a while, and it's finally here, and you have that big sigh of relief. And the first month or so we were off, it was good, and I was kind of planning things in my head. I'm a big planner. But this week I've hit this emotional wall, and I've found everything quite overwhelming, because although we have lots of practical decisions to make, like where we're going to live and how much money do we need and how are we going to make the finances work and the things we have to do in order to do that, like we're going to have to downsize our home in the UK. And on paper that seems like quite an easy thing to do, but we've lived there for 18 years and raised our kids there, and it's not just a case of sticking a board out the front and hope someone buys it, because once that house has gone, then that means our family is changed, because that's always been the place where the kids can come back to, and because we have room for them all there, and to change and not have that anymore is, I can't even explain it. I mean, they're all adults now, but to not be able to say to them all at the same time, come back and live home, like in COVID, we all was under the same roof again. And we was able to do that because we had room for everybody, and it brought me so much happiness to be able to have everybody under one roof, especially in that time, because there were so many unknowns, and to have everybody in the same place and know that they were as safe as they could be brought me a lot of peace. And downsizing is kind of going to take that away. And I didn't really hit me until this week, the emotional side of downsizing. And now I can see why other people find it so difficult. It's not just about the bricks and mortar, it's what that represents. So there's lots to consider. Like I said, even on paper, if we do decide to not go back to work and retire early, then it's not just about the facts and figures. It's about what does that mean to us as a family, especially if we do come and live here full time. And again, being practical about it, our children are grown-ups, they've got jobs and partners, and we want them to have fulfilled lives of their own, and coming here is easy, relatively easy. Flights are cheap, flights are quick, they're regular. I've just found this week a bit of a reality check, I think. I spend a lot of my time writing things down, practical things, and I think it's only really this week I've stopped to think about what it's going to actually mean for all of us. And our kids are very, very supportive. I think it's just that last thing, like getting rid of the house and not being able to, we can't offer them a home. Obviously, if anything happened and we all had to be under the same roof again, anything like COVID, we would make it work. It would be, feet in faces, as they say, we'd make room. Anyway, so making this video this week, I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it, because I didn't really know what to say, because I would have been so emotional then. But then this is part of the journey, so this is part of what you need to see. And I've found the whole making videos overwhelming as well, having to produce one every week. And I do want to do that, because I do want to document this journey, because there will be other people thinking about it and doing it, and I want to show you the real side. But this feeling that I have to put a video out every week, and it's, even though it's not a big production, it is in my head. So I think moving forward, just this kind of video diary of what I've done, so neighbours, of what I'm doing that week, how I felt, and I think, what our plans are, because I think as time goes on, the more me and my husband talk about what we're doing, the plans will change, because nothing is set in stone, and we don't know if after spending a long time here this year on our year off, if we're going to want to live here. I mean, it's lovely, it's beautiful, I love it, I think I'm going to want to live here, but I don't feel like we've really embraced living here. It still feels a bit holiday, and that's something we need to wrap our heads around. We've hired a car, because if we did live here we would have a car, and I think that's going to make a big difference to us the next 4 weeks that we're here. We've got a car, because everything has been taking us 6-7 times longer than it would, because we've been walking up and down the hill, walking up and down to the supermarket, instead of, we can drive there in less than 5 minutes and get the shopping, and then that's, within an hour we could have done a week shop, where it would take us much longer than that without the car. Little things like that to try and give us a real taste of what it might be like if we lived here. So yeah, the car I think is going to be really important, and plus we can go out exploring a bit as well. I want to go to Ronda and up to Granada, because we haven't really been outside of our area, not much anyway. We have got a bit of a routine with the gym, so we go to the gym 5 days a week at the moment. That could change. We go about 8 o'clock in the morning, between 8 and 8:30, and that's really good for getting us up and out. But I was talking about these videos. So yeah, what I want to do moving forward is just video diary, how my week's been, what our thoughts are this week. I don't know if I've already said that. See, this is it, my mind is all over the place right now. Also, it's very hard for me to decide to make future plans, because my husband is kind of trying not to think about it in a way. He wants to be here in the moment, but I like to plan, even if it's just option A, B or C. You always see how your future might look in your mind's eye, or how you want it to look, but At the moment, he can't even think about that. I think he's very much deer in the headlights with the not working, because like I said, we've both always worked, but he's always felt the burden of responsibility of working, I think, and providing for his family. And the fact that he's not working now, he's just trying to come to terms with that every day, because it's so alien to him. And then put on top of that the thought of early retirement and not going back to work at the end of this year, I think just compounds that. So it's very difficult. Sometimes I feel like I'm just having conversations with myself, and that's not good, because you don't resolve anything that way, or say, oh, actually I didn't think of that, maybe that might be a good idea. That's what I want. I want that back and forth of, you know, these are our options, how can we improve on them, does anything stick, you know, does anything sound like that might be something we can do. I think maybe talking to other people might help. And if you've got any suggestions, input, have you been through this? You know, how did it affect you? Because any kind of coping mechanisms that we could use, I think, would be helpful. I like to write things down and have all the facts and figures out in front of me. But like I said, it's not just about that, it's the emotional side of, this is going to sound dramatic, I feel like we've abandoned our children, and that's silly, because we're not abandoning our children, and if they needed us, we'd be back like that. We've always been like that, and they know we're like that, so it's not even like they're not worried. You know, we've spoken to them all individually, and you know, maybe they wouldn't tell us if they were worried, because they would just want us to do what we wanted to do. But we know we'll always be their safety net. So yeah, this week's been a bit bumpy, and I think it's just going to be like that. Just have to accept as the year unfolds and we get to the point where we have to make decisions, because we need to if we're going to downsize our house back in the UK, we need to start preparing for that. There's little odd jobs, bits of DIY that need doing. The garden needs sorting out. We haven't touched the garden for, I think, about 2 years. It's all there, it's well established, it just needs tidying, and the grass needs reseeding. So that's something, again, that takes time, so we need to do that soon. And if we put the house on the market, we have to time that well, because our mortgage is up for renewal, the fixed part of our mortgage, and if we don't renew that by next June, so June 26, then it goes on to the standard variable rate, and we don't want that. But also we don't want to renew it on another fixed term if we're going to sell next year. So the timing has to be right. So realistically, we want the house to be on the market by January, February next year, in order for it to sell and complete in time, that we're not paying too much interest, because like I say, our fixed rate runs out in June, so it's timing everything as well. And we all know how long these things can take in the UK. Trying to sell a house, even if it doesn't have a chain, it can take 6 months from when you find a buyer. Even that we will be in a chain, because we need to buy somewhere, a smaller place. It's just lots to consider, and I think because I'm thinking about it all the time, it's all I think about, it becomes very overwhelming. and I need to learn to just switch off, because it's affecting my sleep. I'm waking up in the night having terrible heart palpitations, which I was having before I packed up work, which, you know, I took as stress, because as soon as I stopped working, the first month we were here all of July, I didn't have any. I slept really well. I slept with no background noise like I've always before. I've always slept with the TV on at night, need that noise. And when we was here that first month, I didn't have any TV on. I went to sleep soundly and I had no heart palpitations. And now this week in particular, it's been so bad. I have to have the TV on all night long and I get woken up. It's frightening as well, really frightening. So I need to learn to find ways to calm myself down, and I think not allowing myself to think about the detail of what we're doing all the time, and not thinking about this all the time. This consumes my brain, and I need to just say to myself, right, just one morning a week, you just want to sit down with the camera and talk to it like it's a diary about your week, because that's really was my initial intention, part of it anyway. Obviously I wanted to tell you guys the practical things, but it was also, it has to be about the whole journey, otherwise it's just boring facts and figures, I suppose. So anyway, nice things we've done this week. We had some really, really lovely days down by the pool. We don't usually lay by the pool. We usually, at the end of the day, we'll go in because it's hot and have a dip for about half an hour and then we come straight back up. But we had 2 days that we spent by the pool, a few hours by the pool. That was really, really nice. And yesterday, because I was feeling absolutely rubbish and so emotional, just crying for no reason, we walked into La Cala. I found this really lovely little beach bar. They don't serve food, but we'd already had a big breakfast before we left, and we just sat there for a couple of hours. It was on the beach. It was just so lovely. And it's when I do things like that, I think this is what it's about. This is why we're here. I love the sea. I love the sound of the sea, the blue. Look at the sky. Like, even in winter, obviously it does get cloudy and rain here, but hardly ever. It's like this in the winter. Blue. And that's what another reason for me really wanting to spend as much time as we can here and maybe moving here is I really struggle in the winter in the UK. It is so grey for so long. I don't mind the cold. If the sky looked like this and it was freezing cold, I wouldn't care. The cold I can cope with. It's the grey, and it makes everybody just feel so miserable. I just can't bear it. So yeah, we've had some lovely days this week, and you know, they kind of can bring you back round and make you have a kind of reality check on how lucky are we that we are even able to consider this as our new life. And it's that, I think, talking myself round after and hopefully doing this, saying it out loud, kind of puts things into perspective a bit more. But you know, it is a big decision what happens next, and it's not black and white, and it is going to take time to figure out what we're both happy with emotionally, as well as, like I said, the practicalities of it. I think pretty much the practicalities of it, we can afford to do it. We can afford to retire early and live here, but it's the emotional side. Anyway, hopefully I'm going to have pep talks with myself all week this week, and hopefully next week I'll be thinking more positively about it again. I had some good news. I was really worried this morning. One of my, I say children, she's 31, one of my kids had a job interview today. She actually had 2, and I felt sick this morning because I worry so much for them, because I know how nervous I get at job interviews and things like that, and she's not like that. I'm not saying she doesn't get nervous, she does, but she's a lot more confident in her ability, and so I think she was looking forward to it, but I was so worried. And then she called me just before I started filming, so she called about an hour ago, so 11:30 this morning. They offered her the job on the spot, and I was so happy for her, and she's so happy, and just that was one thing I didn't have to think about the rest of the day then, because like I said, they offered her the job on the spot, so really happy for her, and that's made me feel much better about the rest of the day, not having to sit there worrying about how she's feeling, and is she feeling nervous, and are they going to be nice to her. All this mum stuff that goes on in your head, it doesn't matter how old they are, you never stop worrying about them. But anyway, that was a bit of good news. So yeah, hopefully moving forward, having the car is going to give us a more realistic view of what life might be like here. We can busy ourselves a bit more, so I'm not just sitting around worrying about the future. And we're here for another 4 weeks, and then I think when we go back we're going to have another sit down with the kids and talk to them about what it really means for us to be moving here, what it means for them. And like I said, we've had these conversations, and they're probably going to roll their eyes and go, we said it's fine, we know you'll be there for us, and we know you just have to pick up the phone. But yeah, I need to learn how to deal with it and cope with it. Anyway, like I said, hopefully next week things will be more cheery. I'd love to hear your comments. If you've got any questions, please leave them down below, and I'll answer them to the best of my ability. Take care, see you next week.